For this election, what matters most in the Middle East is the battle against ISIS, the war in Syria, and the flood of refugees they have created. In the U.S., Donald Trump's stance on Muslim immigrants is controversial. But how does it play in the Middle East? The Saudi broadcaster Rotana Halajia ran a famous video clip.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
The program focused on the effects of anti-Muslim rhetoric on the 70,000 Saudi students in the U.S.
There are many states where people completely disapprove of Trump's statements. The Americans themselves understand that these kinds of statements present a danger to America and its politics.
Their comments were often laced with criticisms of the election process.
I think the distorted image is a result of the Western media. More specifically, the American media, which makes money off of what happens in the Middle East.
Qatar's Al Jazeera English criticized a different aspect of media. They highlighted the Clinton campaign's cozy relationship with the press, based on WikiLeaks revelations.
Like most government towns, Washington has seen its share of political hacks. This one was different. There are plenty of emails written by Clinton staffers discussing which reporters were friendly and potentially useful. That is not unusual. However, the degree of cooperation the campaign got was, including from the outlet that calls itself America's newspaper of record.
So they selected a New York Times reporter by the name of Mark Leibovich, saying that he seemed sympathetic. Well, a week after they selected him for the interview, he emails the Clinton campaign, and he gives them a list of the questions he asked and a few of the answers that Hillary Clinton gave that he thought that the Clinton campaign would object to. And he gave them veto power, his words, to sort of excise whichever questions they didn't like.
Al Jazeera English is a credible news source, but some Middle East English broadcasters are purely in it for the propaganda. Iran's Press TV is a standout in this regard. Here are highlights of one commentator on the U.S. election.
Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV, Mr. Hassan Ali. Now, this third and last debate, it was just two people going at each other.
Yeah, unfortunately, the U.S. presidential election has become a complete farce and a joke. The U.S. is not a democracy, it's a farce. This is, the entertainment channels pushing out two idiots who are trying to score points on each other, with more than likely Trump being so obnoxious that ultimately Clinton will win, which will ultimately lead to some sort of psychotic war, because clearly Clinton has got serious bipolar issues and psychological issues. I mean, she's crazy. They're both crazy.
But other Arabic language media are more thoughtful in their analysis and commentary. Al Jazeera Plus used Trump's Muslim statement as a jumping-off point, exploring a different direction.
Trump puts his company name on a resort located in the UAE that includes a mosque. Trump makes millions of business projects with businessmen from several Muslim countries. Most of them are hotels, resorts, and real estates. His controversial statements towards Muslims forced the landmark group to stop dealing with him.
Youssef al-Husseini, a well-known Egyptian commentator, had this to say.
Muslims inside and outside of the states, Americans, students, visitors, he mixed them all together. You have to listen to his speech. His extremist speech isn't any different from any terrorists or extremists. Listen to this.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
The issue is not Donald Trump's words. The issue is the cheering and the applause we can hear echoing to his words.
Ironically, the one rare uplifting moment in the campaign involved a Muslim, Khizr Khan, the father of a decorated Marine killed in Iraq. He was a sensation at the Democratic Convention, where he called Trump's proposed ban of Muslims unconstitutional. Al Jazeera's interviewer and commentators seemed proud that Khan stood up for Muslims. They commended him, calling his defense a ball of fire tossed between media and political elites.
Trump has not exempted anyone from from being attacked. The Pope, Mexicans, Muslims, but picking on Muslims was a big mistake on his part, because this was the first time in his campaign that he suffered a setback.
The Washington bureau chief of the London-based Al Hayat newspaper, Joyce Karam, noted that Khan is a simple man.
Khan is an American citizen, not a Democratic politician, and not a member of Congress. In 7 minutes, he was able to expose Trump and to rally the veterans to his side. So they came out and demanded that their elected officials denounce Trump. What we witnessed between Philadelphia and Cleveland is the rivalry between American fear and American hope. Khan's speech will remain in the memory of many people in times to come.
But then Donald Trump stirred more controversy and a response from AJ Plus Arabic.
If you look at his wife, she was standing there. She had nothing to say. Maybe she wasn't allowed to have anything to say. You tell me.
Statements from Donald Trump against Khizr Khan, a mother of an American soldier who was killed in Iraq in 2004. The answer came from Muslim women through the hashtag #CanYouHearUsNow. Hey Trump, what Muslim girl broke your heart? Why are you so salty? Proud to be from a family where my mother, sister, aunts, and cousins are working professionals. Hey D, I spend my time creating solutions with presidents and the like, so I guess we'll never meet. I was raised by proud Muslim parents who taught me that I was equal to any man.